Hi, Cassie. Thank you very much. Welcome, coaches. Welcome to today's webinar. And today we've got Coach Sibiya. As you know, that I don't like talking that much. So what I'll do is I'll introduce Sibiya. I'll ask the questions because Sibiya is the guy that you've actually come to listen to. So welcome, Sibiya.
Morning, Sean. Morning, fellow coaches.
So just to get started, Sibiya, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got yourself into coaching, and what your aims and objectives are as a coach, and what drives you as a coach?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity and the platform to share my thoughts and my experiences in this amazing journey. Because I think coaching is a journey. There's no set way or set rule. There's no right way or wrong way. But my involvement in coaching started, strangely enough, at a very young age. A guy that was my cricket coach when I was about 16, 17. I just did, job shadowing, actually. And I was like, oh, let me go hang out with my coach and just have a bit of extra coaching and free lessons. So I went to do a bit of that with him, and I shadowed him and I saw what he was doing. And that's when I think I started to really engage and understand what it was that I potentially wanted to do. As a cricket coach, I've always wanted to be a cricketer, and I think that's where you start. But when you start realizing, that maybe you're not as good as you think you are, you might as well just try contribute to whatever knowledge that you have to the next guy to get better. So even in high school, I got involved in coaching hockey and coaching our girls' first team hockey side when I was in grade 11. So I coached the girls, which is very interesting because it's a completely different dynamic. But the main love was always coaching cricket. So I had various people contribute to that and that growth.
I actually looked up on the internet and I saw that you do have one professional game to your name.
Yeah, but one means you're really bad. 100 means you can contribute. So, it's one game. It was a good time. But cricket is a very different sport, and it's a very challenging sport. It's a game based on failure, and we keep going. We go back for more because you prepare for that moment of your moment in the sun where you get 100 or you get 5 wickets, but you spend a lot of time in between getting a lot of things wrong, having bad luck, and that's what coaching cricketers is. As coaches, you just got to understand that it's not always going to be your player's day, and that's where the learning opportunities and the teaching opportunities are for you as a coach.
What does it mean for you, like as a coach? And we talk about it quite a bit in the KFC mini cricket program. We've done it in the Powerade academies, where you see also somebody like Wandile Gwabo that's gone on to actually coach up at a higher level, and also hasn't played professional cricket and that kind of stuff. Because people think that you only have to play at a professional level to be an expert in the game. But I do understand how you need the assistance of those kind of guys, especially for the mental side, and they've understood what it's like to be in a pressurized situation. But there's a lot that you guys can give as coaches also to become eventually even like a Jake White and on the rugby side, a professional coach.
Yeah, I think it's look, Sean, my view on this is yes, it's all good and well, being an ex-international or having played 100 franchise games. That's great exposure. Pressure is relative. Pressure is everywhere, and pressure is a privilege. I'm sure you've heard that going around. And I think being a player, especially a player that's had a long career in playing at a professional stage, a lot of the time that you spend is based on the me factor. You're looking after yourself, you're making sure that you're getting enough runs, you're performing to stay in the team, you're having a consistently good and you're meeting those benchmarks every season to make sure when it's contract season, you get re-signed, to make sure that you score enough runs in franchise cricket to be identified to play in the Proteas or the SAA side before that and that sort of thing. This is all me space. Whereas coaching is, I think, the exact opposite. Coaching is a service. It's serving. It's giving of yourself, giving and giving of your time, your energy. Picking up phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning because one of your players needs you to bail them out and they're in trouble. That's what coaching is. It's servant leadership. So the transition, and that's why guys that aren't necessarily pros, and there are a lot of people. I mean, Jose Mourinho was not world class. He wasn't Maradona as a player. So Alex Ferguson. I mean, there are a few guys in between. You know, Pep is on the other side, who's a very good player and seems to have got the balance of how to serve and how to win people over. Jurgen Klopp and those people that we all look up to as coaches in various codes. And I think that there's a lot of learning that has to happen as a player when you retire, but it also depends on your personality. If you're a person that serves and can lead at the same time, then that transition becomes really easy. You also find coaches where it's about them. And in coaching, it's not about you. You've had your time. It's about making sure that the next guy reaches the next phase of his career. And so I'm very happy that people like Wandi, people like Enoch, Malibongwe, Jeff Toyon, that never played Test cricket, are extremely successful coaches in the code that I'm involved in, which is cricket and South African cricket. And there are many more guys, but there's also room to have the guys that are ex-professionals that have been under those game pressures, those scenarios, and those have experienced that type of anxiety. There's room for everyone, but there's no hard and fast rule that says that the most successful coaches or the best coaches are guys that have played the game. Because guys that have played the game have spent a lot of time focusing on themselves and their journey rather than a collective's journey.
And Malibongo Maketa says that as a coach, you're in the unique position that every single time you go on the field, you can change somebody's life. Now you've got quite a bit of that, and actually I'm going to show a little video clip of a player. Now there's a lot behind this lot behind this game, and there's a lot to talk about within this game. But this specific individual, even though he played against you, you know quite a bit about him, and you were one of the guys that helped find him and develop him and use him. So here's a little video clip from last year's Kai Majola Week. Give me a second to share it.
So I've had the luxury and to have obviously Graham October supporting me. Gershon Robert also plays a massive role. They do a lot more than just look at my cricket. They tap into my personal life and they make sure that I've got everything in order in my personal life. They take care of me financially, they take care of me emotionally, so everything. They're basically just massive role models in my life. And to work with someone like Gersh, who was a fantastic first-class bowler as well, is also a privilege, and I'm really glad to have him in my corner as well. But those two have really been phenomenal in driving me and getting me to this point.
Now, I asked specifically about those two coaches, so that's why I answered specifically about those two coaches. And this falls in line with also a question that's just been asked now is, how do you identify a talent like this, and why do you use this method?
I think, look, a lot of credits and well done to Sibiya. I mean, last year he was fantastic in that period of the game because it had a pretty poor week up until then. And I remember sitting with him at supper 2 days before that, and he's going, geez, I can't seem to find. I said to him, you gotta stop trying. Don't look for something that is not there. You'll find a moment that will change your week. You just got to identify that moment. And funny enough, it happened against my team. So, so we had a good laugh about it after the game. But identifying a talent, I think Cricket South Africa needs to get a lot of the credit. And, you know, a lot of there's not been a lot of positive media about Cricket South Africa's work, but at a ground level and an operations level, everything has been fantastic. Everything's been good. I think there are systems and structures in place in the federation, excuse me, and people that are driving talent ID. There are various sections, and I think Siya, if I can take you back, Siya Plaiki was a young boy at Newlands Cricket High School, which is based at the stadium. And he's from Khayelitsha. So he's been through that township program, that Sunfoil program within the, I think it was called the Sunfoil program back then, that used to be held, tournament was held in Maritzburg, if I'm not mistaken, at Michaelas. And it's where all the township boys play against each other from the various provinces, almost like a township provincial tournament that was initiated by KZN Cricket and Sunfoil and Cricket South Africa. And in that, guys like Siya, Bonga Makaka, Lifantanzi, Andila Mokhakana, Tamsanga Kumalo, Mikali Bongwane. I mean, the list is endless of talented young black players. I actually think Lungi and Andile Peshukwayo came from the same system. And it's a very important tournament, I believe, in South African cricket, especially when it comes to making sure that we identify enough of the right quality black African players, which there are there. There are plenty of them in this country. We just need to, again, nurture that talent. And as Siya says in his interview, it's more than just coaching them, because of the history of our country, and we need to take a more holistic approach. And that is what Cricket South Africa drives through its player development plan and player performance plan with each player. So Siya would have his own PDP, which is unique to him. And then there'd be a needs analysis done. And that would help us identify the real issues to help Siya focus on performing on the cricket field and having moments like he did last year, where he's not worried about his next meal, where he's not worried about school fees and books. And Siya is actually one of the boys that's he ended up in Weinberg Boys through the MAD Foundation Scholarship Fund, where they also support the education side, which is an initiative that is part of that, the pillars of talent ID within Cricket South Africa's youth development structures. So it's with these guys, I think the talent is always there, the ability is always there. It's us as coaches identifying the ability and the potential of the ability and the promise, and then exposing them to playing against the best players. And playing against your traditional boys' schools. I mean, Siya every single year would play, 25, 30 games for Weinberg Boys, maybe 40. Go on 1 or 2 school tours, play in Cape schools, play at a national week. So that talent is then enhanced through this exposure at different levels. And that is credit to Cricket South Africa, and obviously finding the right people and the right coaches to drive those processes and follow through with them. Because it's one thing finding a talented player, it's then putting structures and interventions in place to assist this player to reach their full potential, and creating opportunity. Now that goes with whether it's a black kid, a white kid, a purple kid, it doesn't matter what color or creed the player is, but you as a coaching structure or a union have then got the responsibility to find and identify what it is in this person, what they're capable of and what they can do, and 2, to nurture it and use the funding and the support structures that Cricket South Africa puts in place to support the player, so that they can have moments like this and they actually understand that all my success doesn't necessarily come from a skills coaching component. It's actually a holistic player development plan and process that is implemented over, I think with Siya, it's been over a 5-6 year period. And now he's close to playing senior provincial cricket. He's an academy player at Western Province, and he's studying. So that's the process of changing lives, making sure that these guys are are equipped to live after the game, or if it doesn't work with cricket, that cricket's been the vehicle to getting a degree, to getting a qualification and being able to contribute positively within the community. This is not just unique to our country, but I can only speak about South Africa and the dynamic of South Africa and the socioeconomic disparities in our country. And these are the gaps that we, as a coaching federation or a cricket federation or as a national federation, need to keep cognizant of, because it's more than just playing cricket. You can't pick an 11 in South Africa without taking into account the dynamics and the demographics and the socioeconomic challenges, because there are such big gaps in our socio lives, if I could say it that way.
What age do you start identifying talent?
I think talent in this, I believe these boys all played mini cricket. So we've got a Baker's mini cricket program, which
KFC.
is played. Sorry,
KFC.
KFC. Sorry. Oh, geez, I'm that old. Sorry, KFC. Thank you for correcting me, KFC. And apologies to our sponsors for getting that wrong. And so, KFC mini cricket program will feed into schools and hubs. And the hubs are basically little pockets and areas around South Africa and different provincial structures that look after talent or find that talent in that space. And from there, the hubs, the best hub players, get sent to the RPC, which is the Regional Performance Center. And each province has one or sometimes two, but it's normally one regional performance center, where the best hub players play against the schools. So they're playing the schools league on a Saturday, which then allows these development or developing players to compete against our traditional boys schools, who have all the resources and the fields and the facilities to accommodate them. And then from the RPCs, framework coaches and provincial coaches and scouts and selectors would then identify these boys to go into a provincial trial process. So at Gauteng, there's the Gauteng week, which before that, there's the Gauteng Schools Week, which is trials in different areas, so north, south, and all of that. And in Western Province, it would be the same. And I can't speak for other unions because I haven't been involved there. But these are the two unions I've been involved with. And then from that space, they would then identify a provincial side. And these players would have then obviously come into that space and developed through time and through various programs to expose them to better cricket. And then from provincial or national weeks, players would then compete against other provinces, the best players in the provinces. And then from there, that's where the structure of the talent acceleration program comes in, from about under 14, 15, because the first camp that those players will be exposed to would be a TAP camp that's held in Fort Hare. And then that would spread to a TAP team being selected to play at Michaelmas Week, a TAP team being selected to play at St. David's Time Festival week. And various weeks around, schools weeks around the country. And then these guys would then obviously, again, they're being exposed to playing against the best players in the country consistently, or best players in boys' school cricket consistently. Then from there, the national coach will then start cutting his teeth around picking an under-17 national camp group, identified group. Each province has their own identified list of players that normally should link up with what the national coach is looking for in terms of identification, skills and skills gaps, and being able to put the right support structures in place. And then we obviously get to, after the national weeks, there's a Cubs team that is picked from each franchise. So that's the unions in that region. So for example, at Gauteng, what makes up the Lions franchise is Northwest and Central Gauteng Lions. Combine the best players in the Gauteng region And that's how we get to the Lions franchise Cubs team. And those boys would then compete at 6 teams, 6 franchises, compete as the best players in the country for SA19 honors at Cubs Week. And then from there, the team would be selected, the best players or the most talented players or whatever, best performers, whatever the criteria may be at the time, and the way, you know, the coach is looking for a makeup of the team and the balance, and all of those things are taken into account. I'm not a selector, but I can say, well, that's what I would assume happens. And then we'd have our national under 19 side that will then obviously compete in bilateral series. And then the journey really begins for these players in their careers. And then they get picked for various academies, national academy, you know, semi-pro. Some go to franchise cricket after the under 19 tenure, after a World Cup. And then, yeah, and then their careers actually start then. They don't start at an under 19 World Cup. They start afterwards, where then they go into the big world and they compete with the big boys. So that's our talent identification system, as far as I understand it. And it's it's not a perfect system, because you sometimes miss players, because we're dealing with a subjective matter, which is cricket. So there's no hard and fast rule. You're going to miss people. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of good competition. But I think Cricket South Africa is consistently on the right path in terms of trying to unearth that talent and trying to scrape every single corner of the country to find the players that we need to take our country forward. And I think we're in an exciting phase. We're in a rebuilding phase throughout our structures. And I'm very excited to see what can be achieved in the next 5 to 10 years. Hopefully it will be an under 19 World Cup and a national World Cup and a women's World Cup. It'll be great. So I'm excited for all those things within our cricket.
Okay, time for a tough question.
Yes.
In your view, why is cricket development taking place so slowly in South Africa? More development is taking place at the privileged schools. What's happening in the disadvantaged schools?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think the big thing here is we've got to understand the financial dynamic of power. It's very difficult to expect Cricket South Africa on their own, without any assistance from the municipalities and the government only in those regions, to maintain quality facilities. That's the first thing. So access is the first and most important thing. If you don't have quality facilities or good enough or adequate facilities, it's going to be difficult to consistently grow the game. And the difference between township and, I'm not going to name any schools, and previous Model C school is, previous Model C school is 150 years old, with an old boys union that has 250 million bucks in their coffers to fix nets, to build an indoor center, to build a new clubhouse, to get 20 other coaches that are the best coaches around, that they can pay whatever they can afford to pay them. So a township has one guy probably that is passionate about this game, and he has 2 stumps, 10 cones, and 6 cricket balls. And unfortunately, the socioeconomic challenges that we face as a country make it challenging, not difficult, not impossible, challenging for us to grow the game consistently throughout our country. And it's something that, you know, I think Cricket South Africa punch way above their weight division in terms of the budgets that we have versus the rest of the top test nations have to grow the game and create access. But, you know, there is some proper deliberate efforts to do that. And there are conversations that take place, I'm sure, to even make it better, to enhance it. But yeah, we're a democracy that's very, very young. We also got to take all of those things into account. That's what I said in the beginning. It's not just cut and dry in South Africa. It's nowhere near that. It's probably going to take another 2 generations to level the playing fields. And we're still there. So let's be patient and understand that the country's growing. There are efforts being made, but we need to be cognizant of the challenges that we have as a nation, to be able to develop our cricketers and find the best players that will win us World Cups.
So you've had a couple of chats to Rolf Dravid, and what kind of system is, I mean, because he's sitting with, I don't know how many professional coaches, more money than the Proteas have. So what do they have in India? What is the structure that you kind of like competing against in India from a financial or coaching from a national level?
Look, Raul believes that we have a better system than them. Now, I don't know if he was being polite, but or not. But look, India is a lot more than us. They've got every union or I think it's like 32 or 36 states that are playing cricket. They've got various different tournaments, various platforms to identify talent. And then obviously the vacuum, as you get close to the top of the pyramid, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And financially, we can't compete with India in terms of budget. Let's just look at our under-19 system. They can tour outside of India with 2 different teams 3 times a year, just hypothetically speaking. Just before that World Cup, they went to the UK, they played in the Asia Cup, and they came to South Africa before the World Cup. They were able to play South Africa and Afghanistan in India in February with, not this year, the year before, with 2 teams. And the India B team was able to win the tournament. So when we speak about numbers, I don't know how many billion people in India, but if it was 60% of them are males, 55% of them probably play cricket at some point. And we can't be punching in that division, especially when the BCCI have that much money to unearth and have the best experts and pay them enough. None of those coaches leave or want to leave Indian cricket because there's no ambition for money. It's not a problem. And as coaches, it's very difficult in our country because unfortunately guys need to make a living. Guys want to better their lives. Guys want to get out of the township and move to a nice, comfortable and safe area, whatever it is. Or they want to stay in the township and have a house bigger than a 1-room shack. And that's some of the challenges that our coaches are facing in this country. And that's the economic side. There's not enough money. Or there is money, but it's just not enough to look after everyone. So what do guys do? Guys then take jobs up where? At the schools that can pay them. So your best township coaches are finding themselves leaving the township, all the hard and difficult and challenging areas, to move to the areas that are going to pay them an extra little bit, and they end up coaching a B or a C team at a boys' school or a traditional cricket school or whatever it is, and then they get lost. And the guy had a lot of promise as a coach, but because there's no financial assistance or there's not enough, it makes it difficult for guys to stay in their region. And really, that is why we are battling consistently to produce quality players of color. That's just one of the reasons that I see. And it's difficult. We can't ask CSA. They're not never ending well of money. You know, at some point we need corporate to assist. But we also need to be winning as a nation in order to get people to assist. So that's a double-edged sword in that sense. If your test side or your one-day side are winning and they're the best in the world, everyone wants to get in bed with you and sponsor your programs. But if you're not necessarily successful right now and you're in a transition, I think, you know, you got to just bide your time, keep doing the right things and trust the process of your talent ID and your coaching in the various pockets that you have. So we're very different to India. India doesn't have targets. India doesn't have to level any playing fields. They all, no disrespect, they're all Indian ethnic people. You know, and that's their own situation. They've got different challenges. So yeah, it's a tough one to compare us to India. We've got to compare ourselves to South Africa and better South African cricket and South African sport. you know, we've just watched Chasing the Sun, and I think that's a perfect example of making it work. That's the true epitome of South African people. They've got Ubuntu, they care for each other. Let's use those values and those parameters to grow.
And,
That's my...
There's a question that goes back to the hubs, and I think it also helps out a little bit here too, is that how do hubs operate? Could hubs be what they have as community centers and townships? And, you know, how do you get like community centers involved to get, because there are massive numbers of kids that would love to play cricket or love to play sport. How could somebody get like a community center involved or create a hub in their area or region?
Oh, it's an awesome question, and I'm probably I've coached as a hub coach, so I've started from the bottom. I'm one of the very few probably coaches that has not come in at the top. I've come in from, I was a hub coach, private coach, hub coach, framework coach, and I still am framework under 15, under 17, and then obviously now under 19 academy, and then at various other pockets that I've been involved in a higher level. So hubs work like this. So the hub that I was with is Primrose Hub, which is Primrose Cricket Club in Cape Town, in Kenilworth. And what the way a hub works is in your geographical area, you have schools. So you pick 4 primary schools, let's say, and 4 high schools. You would then run as the hub coordinator or hub head coach, run a primary school league and then a high school league in your hubs. From that league, you would select your hub age group teams. So your under 10s, I think it's under 11s, under 13s, under 10s, under 11s, under 13s, boys and girls. And then high school under 16, under 18 sort of thing. And those schools in your region form your hub team. And the hub takes care of various things. The hub is a learning center for the kids that have, you know, they come from school straight to the hub, and practice only starts at 4 o'clock. So what are they going to do between 2:30 and 4? There's a smart television there where there's extra classes, there's homework areas for them to, in the clubhouse, to do extra tutoring. There's maybe a tutor that's there to assist the kids with maths and science and English, because those are also the challenges that hubs and RPCs and those types of places face, because you're generally in the heart of the township. So that's what hubs are supposed to do. So if that answers it, and you're happy, that's fine. And then obviously those hub teams would play against other hubs teams. So Primrose would play against Victoria, St. Augustine's that play against Tygerberg, and then the best players out of all the hubs would go to the RPC, and then the RPC, those best players then obviously play again in the boys' school league or the traditional school league. That's how the model's supposed to work, and I'm pretty certain that is how people believe it works and should work.
Then what kind of a role can a club cricket play in identifying and nurturing talent in both provinces and franchises? Because I mean, club cricket for the senior kids or senior guys, it's not as strong as what it used to be, but for juniors, it's very, very powerful.
Club cricket is, I mean, when I was growing up, it was the lifeblood of South African cricket, I think. And club cricket, I think, is a better exposure space for young players to play more games, to be exposed to senior players, to be exposed to, and that's, I mean, I'm speaking about a young 14, 15-year-old player playing second team or third team, even a 12-year-old playing in like the Golden Oldies League on a Saturday, where you with guys that used to play the game at a high level, but they've gone on a little bit with age. And I think our club cricket is healthy in our country. There are regions where I think we need to get better. That boils down to that other issue that we spoke about, the socioeconomic side. Our township clubs are battling because of administration and and infrastructure and sustainability of that infrastructure. And that's something that we need to maybe look at and focus on, because if our township cricket is strong, which it used to be, you know, that's where people like Jeff Toyana and Malibongwe, Makai Antini, all those guys come from township and rural areas. And if we can look after township cricket a little bit more and club cricket, township club cricket, I think that we could again tap into another stream of the strength of South African cricket, South African sport. So clubs do play a major role. I do know that Cricket South Africa really does try to put an emphasis on the growth of that. There's that community cup where only clubs can participate, and that plays a massive part, because the first team player, you know, would normally be the under 13 coach, and that's how kids learn that interaction. And then you end up playing the same team as the guy, and you're like, yo, this is where I am. And that just builds that mentorship space also. So it would be nice to see, you know, people really looking at club cricket seriously as a space where we can grow our players, we can develop young players from there, and create another avenue of access.
Here's a question more on the qualifications. So how do you become a CSA coach, and does CSA maybe offer free coaching courses to students in universities?
Yeah, so coaching qualifications are managed by your local region, your union. So for us in Gauteng, it's the coaching manager is Dumile Skade, so he would advertise on the website when the courses are. I think they're normally between May and October or something like that. That's the period in which, you know, you try to do it before the season starts, which is almost like the winter, autumn sort of period, and going into spring, and then the courses stop. So Cricket South Africa sets out, doesn't necessarily run free courses. It's a small little fee, I think, that you pay to enroll and do all of the whole admin process. But the first place to start would be either a school or a club, and get the information from the school or the club to find out when the courses are through the unions, depending on which province you're in. And then Cricket South Africa facilitate the process, but it is run by the actual union, because every union gets a coaching manager, and then he will then be set out part of his KPIs or job deliverance portfolios are to deliver X amount of coaching courses throughout a year for level 1, level 2 coaching seminars, introductory to cricket, mini cricket courses, different seminars. So there are various things that are in place. And if whoever asked the question is in the Gauteng region, they can contact Central Gauteng Lions or go onto the website and get in touch with Mr. Dumile Skade.
And there's the same thing set up in pretty much every province, so they can contact the province and they'll be able to help out.
Yes, 100%.
Now, I don't know if I kind of like know the answer to this one here, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. So what qualifications do coaches need to have to coach at school level? Does CSA have a ruling with this regard?
At a school level, look, I think CSA managed the criteria for the programs that they directly manage. So hubs, you know, to be a hub coach, I think you need a hub assistant coach. You need a minimum of a level 1, but having a level 2 is an advantage. And I think with schools, it's a bit different. I think the schools run their own show. It's not governed by CSA, but you know, the schools trust, you know, an old boy that's been at the school playing first team cricket, and you know, get given an opportunity to grow and coach. It's then, I think, up to them to really avidly try to grow their qualifications and their experience as a coach. So CSA within their structures, you know, schools is part of CSA, but you know, schools aren't completely run by CSA. They can hire and fire whoever they want. They can set their own job specs. But within Cricket South Africa structures, if you want to coach as a as a hub assistant coach and then become a hub coach and then RPC coach, you need to have a level 3 because you need to have the managerial expertise and skills to look after the whole province's development structure because that's your role. To be a framework coach, you need to have a level 3, and that's from under 13 till under 18 and academy. So I hope that answers that question, Sean. I think it's...
Yeah, I know in the KFC mini cricket space, the idea is to get into the program initially, and then KFC through their seminars and other courses provide you with the basics. It's not a proper level 1 or level 2 course, but at least you've got the ability to coach basic cricket and get the basics to the kids.
Yeah.
And then we just got a comment here saying that the coaching courses in Gauteng due to coronavirus have been suspended until the end of May. So there is a bit of a wait at the moment, but they'll definitely kick off again and start up again soon. So now with your now this one here goes to your the recent you've just recently had 2 TAP camps. So what's the result of these the camps, and have you learned anything from the previous under-19 World Cup that you feel that you need to do differently for the next World Cup, and you're really currently working on it?
Yeah, I think the start of your next World Cup campaign is normally the day after you exit the previous one. And obviously there's a change of coach, and I think there's a change of philosophy, there's a change of vision. There have been some key learnings that I experienced being involved in the previous tenure, and I think if you listened to Mark Boucher, our head coach, speaking, we've been speaking about aggressive but smart cricket, and then finding the personnel for that. So Coach Shukri, the head coach of the SN19 side, is very much about allowing players to be free, allowing players to express themselves, and understand that conditions are what dictates the way we play rather than situations. And so those are the little things that we want to take forward. These previous 2 camps that we've had have been successful, and the reason for them and the reason for the age of those players being under 17 is because those are the guys that are born after the 1st of September 2002, which means they qualify for the 2022 World Cup. It's been a difficult time, and obviously I'm sure people will be a little bit unhappy as to how did we come to those players. Excuse me. But Cricket South Africa has a monitoring system of these players. These players would have played under 13 week. They would have played under 15 week last year, and some of the exceptional ones that were a year young would have even played under 19 week, and some of them would have played in their club sides last year. So there are guys that have been, that exiting of that previous under 19 group from the World Cup does not mean that we had no players behind it. That's why it's called a system. It keeps feeding each other. And that's what Shooks has looked at in those 2 camps. He's been specific about what he wants in terms of skills. I think as a country, if we're going to be competitive in one-day cricket, we need to have wrist spinners. And we need to start managing wrist spinners at schools and start giving them opportunities to grow. And that's left arm wrist spin, right arm wrist spin. We need to start getting fast bowlers, not medium pacers that bowl with the keeper up, really fast bowlers that are nice and aggressive, because that's also the South African way. That's part of our DNA. And we need to focus on making sure that boys are scoring hundreds, and I'm talking big hundreds, proper batsmen. And obviously all-rounders allow you to pick, 2-in-1 cricketers. So when there's a guy that's an all-rounder, it would be nice to see that those guys are getting to bat number 5 and bowl their 10 overs and win games of cricket for their teams. So that's what Shooks' vision may be right now. And he's got one eye on obviously a series probably in March next year, and then he's got obviously the World Cup to prepare for. I'm just throwing out a month. It could be at the end of the year. We're in a very different time as to our old normal. But that's the vision at the moment. And obviously there's going to be various platforms going forward for players to show their skills, and for the selectors and the head coach to look at them, and constantly keep tabs on them. So he's been a breath of fresh air, in that sense, starting afresh with a nice relaxed environment also, just as much as everyone else, and every coach wants everyone to be happy and own their space and be responsible for it. So it's been a good couple of those camps have been good. They've been fruitful. They've been also very, very exciting to see the talent that we have, and that we're in a good space. And I can confidently say that we have a lot of young, exciting cricketers that will hopefully be on display for the country to see very soon.
But this is like the first camp that you guys have had since lockdown. So how's lockdown affected coaching for you? And when it opens up, what advice and learnings do you have for coaches? You must have learned a lot from the camps.
Yeah, there's a lot. Lockdown has taught us to find different ways, and coaching is about finding a way. So I find myself, I've done virtual batting sessions with my players. We've done online virtual yoga, online stretching, online core sessions. So there's no real excuse if you've got the access and you've got the means. And we put in, for the guys that don't have internet and computers at home, we'd send them data and say, right, for 2 days in the week, we're going to do a virtual session. We're going to speak to different coaches. And I think what we did in Gauteng was we had quite a few webinars with different experts. So we had Neil McKenzie, we had JP, we had Vian, we had Malibongwe, and with all the knowledge and experience that these guys have had at the top level, it's been a great advantage to see. And maybe it's a way that we can prepare our players now. Instead of an off season and everything going quiet, I plan on going digital, because those conversations have fed the thinking of our players. I can really see it in the way we've been training recently, where there's a lot more deliberate understanding of what it is that a player wants to do and what he wants to improve in, based on the conversations had, the questions that they were asking, the engagements about leadership and owning your space. And each of these guests that we had as within our space contributed different values, different beliefs, different philosophies, which is what coaching and cricket is about. I think because a lot of our players don't play club cricket with men. They finish or if they do, they play their game, they pack their bag and they get in the car. Whereas now, lockdown helped us to have more conversations with experts and guys that have played the game for a long time and been successful. Guys that have coached at a high level, so they could ask coaching questions and challenge me as a coach to be better, to understand more for them. And that's when it's been amazing. And those have been my lessons. At the camps, the camps were amazing. We had 2 camps. We had one in Pretoria and one in PE. And obviously the messaging is consistent from the head coach's point of view. But just having guys like Paul Adams, Ezra Poole, Kruger van Wyk, Vinnie Barnes, Rory, all those expert coaches and experienced guys in their fields, in their skills as some ex-players, was world-class. And I think it was a genius move by Shooks to actually surround himself with all these experts in their different fields that would feed and drive the philosophy that he wants to implement within South African under-19 cricket, which is very, very exciting. So that was very special for me, because I believe that if you want to be a good coach, You want to be successful, and success isn't defined by winning necessarily. You need to surround yourself with people that are the masters in their space, to put in kind words.
Then within the talent identification process, how do you handle stardom in young players that sometimes destroys growing talent?
Stardom. We have a lot of guys like that in South African cricket. But no, I think your personality as a coach it'll help you understand the balance between allowing that person to fly high, but also not in the clouds where, they actually start believing that they're bigger than the space. And that's where the values of a coach and the values of a system and a program are so important. And the communication amongst coaches and the relationship. So if it's a player that's an exceptional player comes from word school, whatever, and everyone knows he can play. Everyone has somewhere along the line blown smoke up his buttocks. But it's really important to manage that personality so that they are able to be the best person they can be. Not just the best player. The best players don't make the best people all the time. That's why the best player isn't always necessarily the right guy to be a captain. Because, there's a lot of self-loathing that happens within that person. And we've got to manage that. You don't have to cut it down. You've got to be strong enough as a coach to draw the line, but also allow that person to thrive, because their competitive nature comes from their robust personality of knowing how good they are. And you've got to pump tires and make them feel good, but also you can also deflate the tires every now and then just to manage the air pressure within the personality. And that comes through experience as a coach, and a lot of the big word is a relationship. You've got to develop a relationship with that player. You normally have one or two of them in your system. If you're lucky, you have 3 or 4. And if you can manage that personality and enhance it through a positive relationship, a non-breakdown type of relationship with that player, where you're always making an example of them in a group space. So managing the person and the personality is important, and will always be important, because every coach will come across at least one player that's a star, and you mustn't be afraid of that. It's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to tell him where to get off. But don't be afraid to give him love and tell him that you care and you want them to succeed. And winning them over to be in your corner and understand what you want as a coach is the skill, and that's the art of your coaching. It's nothing to do with throwing cricket balls. It's the conversations and the relationship that you build with that player in order to get the best out of them.
So from the recent TAP camps, you've selected 2 teams that are going to play against each other in Pretoria in December, but as a practice game. But some players didn't make it to that level, but there's still some outstanding talent out there. It's not the end of the journey for those guys. How do you encourage those guys to stick at it and not get discouraged by what happened? And this is also the same with that Sibiya interview that we played. He had just been left out of the Under-19 World Cup. So how do you teach a guy to bounce back from that?
I think honesty, and I think as coaches we need to be that. I think most coaches have that as number one in their value system within their teams. And I think being honest with the guy about his growth and where the opportunities lie, and helping them understand that, there's many ways to get to the top. It's not, everyone believes that playing SA 19 will define that you become a test player for South Africa, you're going to play in the IPL. I don't think so. I think we have enough guys that have gone through different channels where they've been knocked down, been left out, and got back up. And that's the character that players need to develop. But if we are not honest with players and we say, oh no, Sean didn't pick you for the S19 side because, Sean's useless, he doesn't know, then we're working against each other as coaches. We're not actually feeding. Then you're fueling a negative bear rather than actually trying to find a positive and a solution-based process to help the player grow. I've had difficult conversations with some of my provincial players. I mean, Cubs Week, I had Cubs Week 2019 or 2019. Had 2 players that were in my Gauteng side that got left out from the SA19 side to go to India, and they felt that they needed to go or they were good enough to go, but they weren't. And and you need to be honest and you say, look, you've had your opportunities, you've had your time. I think you took someone else's opportunity and time before, so you got to understand that let's find a solution now as to how do we go forward. Where do the opportunities lie? Let's not look at the problem. The problem is you've been left out and you feel really embarrassed and horrible and you feel entitled to this position because you've played before. But nothing is guaranteed in life. And we need to start teaching this generation that everything that they want to achieve needs some degree of work and some degree of consistent performance. If you do not perform, you shouldn't play because you're watering down the process of excellence and the process of winning. I have those conversations with my players. And they're hard conversations. But the player in the long run will respect you for being honest with them rather than selling them freaking fake plastic sweets.
Oh, yeah, Shane's just having a couple of issues joining. Give me a second to sort that out before he joins. But in talking about that, so I've got a comment here, and it is also a little bit of a difficult one to answer, though. So one of the attendees is saying that they believe that CSA is not prioritizing cricket development. After KFC, what happens to players? And it is CSA's duty to provide funding. That's quite a difficult one because I think you've kind of answered it beforehand, saying that there's limited resources. And Shane's going to talk about the limited resources now and how to maximize the limited resources. But how do you think we could actually improve on that?
As I said, I'm not going to be in a position where I'm going to defend certain things. I'm going to speak about what works. I'm a solution-based person, and if people can come with ideas on how we can grow things and make things better, rather than saying that the body that runs cricket in our country is not doing enough. If they weren't doing enough, we wouldn't be consistently producing the players that we are. So in saying that, I believe that communities also, South Africans need to stop looking for a handout. So communities also need to get together and put things together where at this, let's say at Club Ravonia, okay, Ravonia Cricket Club. There's 4 schools in the area. There's a hub that runs here. There's mini cricket at the cricket club. The community within the cricket club needs to also foster the growth. And there's many ways to do it. It doesn't always require money. It requires the most important and most expensive thing, I believe, which is time. Giving of our time to serve the game and assist will, if you're doing something good in your space, within your community, someone out there is going to be looking. Someone out there will see that good work, and someone out there will want to assist, maybe fund cricket balls for you, or sponsor cricket balls, or sponsor a coaching bag, or one of the schools, if you play against them, you have a couple of players that you've coached properly that do well, will want to give those kids a scholarship and maybe give you a coaching bag to run and improve your program. I'm not saying people need to go out there cap in hand, but I'm saying that there are many ways that we can use our resources a bit better, and rather than expecting everything to come from Cricket South Africa. Cricket South Africa does do a lot, but there's only X amount of water in the jug that can go around for everyone. And within that, with those limited resources, we need to find a way to assist ourselves as communities and grow our cricketers. And some of our best coaches were the old guys that used to play in the 4th team, and those guys give back to the club, and creating a family type environment has normally, for me, always been the best way to educate and grow players. And as I say, a child isn't raised by a parent, it's raised by a community. And if we can get together as communities and assist in growing the space and give of our time, I think we can bridge that gap a little bit. And then other things can maybe open up in terms of assistance.
Now, there's a comment here that says that some coaches feed players. I mean, you've got to let them down lightly, but feed players false information regarding their talent. And you got coaches telling players how phenomenal and fantastic they are, but then, of course, they don't achieve on the field, or they don't get selected for anything. How can you fix that feeding players false information?
I think it boils down to what we spoke about, I think 2 questions ago, about honesty and the values of the coach. Look, there's people do things for different reasons. If you're coaching and that's your bread and butter, and you are, if you get this kid to come back to you for another 10 sessions of private coaching or whatever it is that you're doing for him, you might be inclined, you shouldn't be, but you might be inclined to tell him and pump his tires and tell him he's good and all of this, because you want the kid to come back for another lesson. But I think honesty is just a very important thing. It's only fair and only right. And if a kid doesn't have it and he's going to be a great social cricketer, that's okay. But you want to encourage him to be the best social cricketer that he can be. And so that you can keep him in the game, because there's many ways to make it in the game. All of us want to play for South Africa. Our dream is to play for South Africa. But if we're brutally honest, less than 1% of us will play for South Africa. But there's administration, there's the medical side, there's the coaching side, there's the mentorship side, there's the financial side. So there's many spheres where young players can go into if they don't become a Proteas player. The Proteas are just the front runners that are in the front lines out there, and everyone sees them. But we forget about the people that are behind the business of the Proteas getting out there. And those are also things that we as coaches need to educate our young players about the opportunities and the avenues that are out there to grow. There's the media side, and these guys all like social media now. So there's taking photos, writing articles, and doing what you do, Sean. You're still involved in the game, and you're passionate about it. And so it's just, it's honesty, and it's about being fair to the player. False information and telling guys that they've made it or they're going to make it is not fair, because realistically speaking, I said less than 1%, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's more than 1% that make it. And so let's be honest and then have integrity in what we do, because we have an important role to play in young people's lives. And the first thing is not to bull dust them. It's to be straight up and down the line and make sure that we explain things correctly and fairly.
Right, and then just like a last thing is that, you've spoken about the fact that there are resources at the more affluent schools. So the affluent schools, they've got somebody comes in, they've got a bursary for a kid. They want to bring them into the school, and they want to look in the cricket space to bring a kid in. What can they look at, and how can they actually look at getting a player into the school?
I think your biggest, if someone's got the funding to look after, sorry, Shane's here, I'm gonna say Shane. If someone's got the financials to assist a player like that, and that player is talented, I think the first step would be to go through the school, to find out what the school is looking for and what kind of person and player they're looking for. And if that kid fits the criteria, and then I think the opportunity could be and should be presented. But the big challenge of all of this, when you take these young players out of the township, and I'm going to speak about black players, take black players out of the township and you put them at a top 1% or whatever school, and that's great. You put him in the boarding house, that's great. But he's exposed to a world that he's got a lot of money and a lot of financial pressure as a young teenager, for example. Now that's a different dynamic in its own right, because what happens is he goes to the school I live in Sandton, so I'm going to say Sandton. He goes to school in Sandton, but he comes from Kagiso. So 7-8 hours, I don't know how long a school day is anymore. I think it's 10 hours, maybe 14. Some of my players tell me it's a 14-hour day, but I think they're lying. and and then he gets into 3 taxis to get to the school in Sandton. 3 taxis, goes home at night at 7 o'clock. To what? To the same environment of poverty, of clutching for a meal, and then the next day he's got to do it again. And then on the weekend, they go on a cricket match and he's got to catch 3 taxis again. So we've got to also take into account that taking these players out of their environment is a great educational opportunity. It's a great academic education, but it's not always a good social space for them to grow. Because when the guys go on a tour, and I'm sure Shane's experienced this as a coach, guys go on a tour and you give them meal allowance money to buy their lunch and stuff like that. And that's to buy like healthy meals and stuff like that and eat properly. Generally, your players of color take that money home with them. They buy 1 box of KFC, a bucket of KFC, they put it in their dorms, and they buy a loaf of bread, and that's what they're going to eat for the 3 or 4 days that you're away with them, because they're going to put that money away and they're going to try help with that money at home. Those are the socioeconomic disparities I was talking about. So when we do these interventions and assist these players to get into these affluent schools, let's just take into account the whole picture. Let's not look at, we want a cricketer. He's talented. He's a fast bowler. Let's look at how we can help this human being be completely better through the system that we're putting in place for them. That would be my cry. I don't discourage it. I believe that it's the right thing to do, because then it gives this kid a head start in life, but it can also set them back. We got to just be aware of what the challenges are and what they could be in 3-4 years' time. And then we've got to be fully committed and never let them down, because they put trust in the schools, they put trust in the school's master, they put trust in the school coach, and the parents will never turn that down. I'm telling you this, Sean, because my family didn't refuse those opportunities, but they had their challenges. And when you go to someone's house and you see their life, and then you look at how small your life is, and kids think like that, unfortunately. And it's important that we develop again that relationship and that trust with that young man to be able to understand where it is they come from and how they need to operate in order for us to make sure that they're a success on the cricket field and in the classroom.
I think we need to invite you back and actually go through this in a lot more detail. This is a topic in itself. And it goes past just talent identification. It's for any sport, any grade, anything within a school. And I think one of these days we'll get you back and we can discuss this, and maybe we can do it at the panel, because Mandla, who's also on here from Sundowns, they've also got their own solutions to what they do in the football space. But thank you so much. It was fantastic. I've still got dozens and dozens of questions here for you. But well, let's move on to Shane. But you've been fantastic. Thank you so much for helping us out today.